One of the things people say about colonization, but that was a long time ago, you have to forget about that and move on. Okay, let's do that. But don't keep getting money from the German government because of the war in 1945, 1939, because the German government is still paying every European country compensation for the war. But that was 70, 80 years ago. Let's forget it. Let's move on. Nobody's going to say that to you. I'm a king. The question you're asking me is, where do I stand in this whole decolonization talk? If that is the question, I personally have a lot of opinions, and that is also based on my experience and the studies that I've done, both at the university level and at other levels. There are so many Europeans who are not aware of the true story, true history of Africa, and there are many Africans who are also not aware of the true story and the reason why Africa is the way it is now in terms of development and everything. Now, this thing about Africa being poor and Europe being rich and the countries of Africa being third world countries and all of that, I'm personally of the opinion that that's just red herring. First of all, people have to define rich and people have to define poor. And we in Africa, we are constantly being told that we are poor. So we believe it. And people of Europe are constantly being told they are rich every day, and all you need to do is look at Africa, and then you say, oh, okay, we are rich. What's rich? What's poor? The basic necessity a human being needs is to eat, to have a place to sleep, and to clean themselves. So a lot of Europeans do that. A lot of Africans do that. But then when we focus on the tiny place where there is drought, where there is famine, and we put that as the picture of Africa, then we think the whole of Africa is dying. I remember the first image, I can never forget that, of Africa that I got in the Netherlands was in 1991. That was the first time I visited the Netherlands. I was living in Germany. I came out of the train station, went into a bus that says, in English, Africa is dying. That was in 1991, but it has not changed. It's still there now. You know how many people will go into that bus, see Africa is dying, please donate to this bank account so that we can help Africa. So that is an image of Africa that people use. My point of view is that those are the people who are actually demonizing Africa and Africans. Because if you will go to Africa and you've been told that Africa is poor, and I saw that a lot of times on Facebook, for example, or on other media, people go to those countries and they will go blindly past the villas, the good neighborhood, and they will go to a village until they finally find that shirtless kid on the street to pick that kid and make a selfie. Yeah, I'm in Africa. Because that's what they've been told to believe. So you don't see the other things, you see only what you need to see. I was an adult when I came here, so I've lived a whole life in Africa, and I'm living a whole life in Europe now. What I see is a difference between both continents is the packaging. There are very good roads here. There are very beautiful houses here. We have in Africa not good roads, but if I want to get from A to B, I will get there. It might take a little bit longer, but I'm not going to stress because I know it's going to take me longer. I don't have to stress myself the whole time, like, oh, I'm going to be a minute late because if that bus does not come at 12 o'clock on the dot, you see a lot of people at the bus station panicking. That's why a lot of people die here of worry than in Africa. Because we are used to a particular structure. So my opinion about also the story about colonization and all of that is people have been whitewashed. The history has been whitewashed a long time ago. When you ask a lot of people, they don't know anything about the impact the Dutch, for example, have had in the whole of world history. That word, apartheid, it's not an English word. It's a Dutch word. They brought it to the world. You know, everything that is happening in South Africa, it started here, Royal Dutch Company. So when you break my leg, one of my legs, and we start, and you say like, let's run 100 meters. But I start with a broken leg. And you are at the finishing line like 3 minutes before me. And you say, hey, but see, you cannot run. Yeah, I'm starting from a point of a disadvantage. So a lot of Africans blame their leaders for a lot of things, corruption and all of that. Who brought corruption to Africa? And what's corruption when you compare to what is happening in broad daylight here? What happens in your face, but you don't use that to say the Dutch society is corrupt, the German society is corrupt. In terms of real numbers, I've always said there is more, like 100 times more corruption in Europe than in Africa. But, you know, we have a way of selling things. We give things other names. So it looks different. When I come here, I'm an immigrant. When white people go to Africa, they are expatriates. That immigrant is going for a good life. That expatriate could go to other places in Europe, but he's going to Africa not to be poor because he wants his or her life to be better. But we have a different name for it. You know, when they say corruption, I think of like the North-South line in Amsterdam, 9.5 kilometers. It was going to cost $500 million. It ended up costing about 9 billion, whatever. Where did all that money go? We're talking about COVID last year with one guy who was supposed to give everybody masks for free. Made millions and millions in broad daylight, conniving with people in the health ministry. If that was Africans, if you convert those money into any African currency, that leader will be taken out of office. But in the Netherlands, we just don't have what the Dutch Prime Minister will say. I don't have any active remembrance of certain things. So, and it's not only in here, it happened in England. I know the health minister and awarding contracts to their friends. We talk of a lot of things as if they are not happening here. And that is the thing. It's propaganda that we have been brought up to believe. One of the things people say about colonization, but that was a long time ago. You have to forget about that and move on. Okay, let's do that. But don't keep getting money from the German government because of the war in 1945, 1939, because the German government is still paying every European country compensation for the war. But that was 70, 80 years ago. Let's forget it. Let's move on. Nobody's going to say that to you. Sometimes it pains me when people just throw out a statement there and then we take it like, oh, I've had it on BBC, so it must be true. We have to understand that many of these news organizations are just a mouthpiece of the government. There is nothing critical about what they say. And the unfortunate thing for people in Africa is we also believe, when we see the white person, those are our savior. The white savior thing, because we believe it. And a lot of white people believe also, when they go to Africa, they are going there to save Africa. The people you are saving have already 3 meals a day. Maybe he doesn't have that fancy car, but the fancy car that I see here is bought on credit. If I don't have enough money, I don't buy a car. In Nigeria, for example, you don't buy things. If we have to go on credit like Europe goes on credit, America goes on credit, we will have the same things. The whole country will be happy because we just be throwing money around. But if I say to you, I have a house in Africa, that is actually my house. I don't need to pay a mortgage on it to anybody. That is actually a house that I've paid for. If I say I have a house here, we say that a lot. Oh, that's my house. Is it your house? It belongs to the bank. If you default like 2 or 3 times, they take that house from you. But I like to end with what Mariam Makeba once said. Until something or someplace is discovered by the white man, then that place or that something does not exist. And it's only when the white man discovers it, then they say, boom, oh, now you exist. And that is something we need to change. We Africans, we need to also say, hey, we are here. Don't discover us. We've been here before you even.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king. I'm a king.